At 82, Marcus Gray was a man haunted by his dwindling clock. With a terminal diagnosis in hand, he embarked on a final pilgrimage to Greece, a land of myth and history that had captivated his imagination since youth. On a solitary hike near Delphi, a slip revealed more than just ancient ruins, a hidden relic, untouched by time, etched with symbols rewriting human history. But as whispers of his discovery spread, Marcus found himself at the heart of a dangerous race for secrets meant to stay buried. The doctor's words came as a heavy blow. Advanced pancreatic cancer. 3 months, perhaps 4. At 82, Marcus Gray wasn't surprised, but the finality stung. His life as a historian had been about uncovering the past, yet he had left his own dreams unfulfilled. Chief among them was visiting Greece, the land of myth and history that had captivated him since childhood. Sleepless that night, he made a decision. If his time was short, he would spend it chasing his dream. Within days, he booked a one-way flight to Athens. This wasn't just a trip. It was a final pilgrimage, a desperate search for meaning. Athens greeted him with its chaotic beauty. The Acropolis loomed above the city, timeless and majestic. Marcus wandered the ancient landmarks, the Parthenon, the Agora, and the Temple of Hephaestus. Yet, despite their grandeur, he felt a hollowness. He wasn't just searching for history. He was looking for something deeper. One evening, he overheard 2 men in a small cafe discussing Delphi and hidden secrets buried in its ruins. The name sparked something in Marcus. Delphi, the ancient sanctuary of Apollo, where the oracle had once delivered divine prophecies, was said to be the center of the world. If there was any place where myth and history intertwined, it was there. The next morning, Marcus boarded a bus to Delphi. The road wound through verdant valleys and rugged mountains. By the time he arrived, the ruins stretched before him, hauntingly beautiful. The Temple of Apollo stood as a reminder of a world long gone. But as he explored, Marcus noticed a narrow, overgrown path branching away from the main site. It seemed forgotten by time. Ignoring the protests of his aging body, he followed the path. The sounds of the modern world faded as he ventured deeper into the wilderness. Eventually, he came upon a small clearing. At its center stood a weathered stone marker etched with symbols. They weren't Greek or Roman, nor did they resemble any known script. Kneeling before it, Marcus ran his fingers over the carvings, feeling a strange warmth emanate from the stone. His heart raced, not with fear, but with the thrill of discovery. This marker was ancient, perhaps older than the ruins of Delphi, and it felt alive, pulsing with energy. Suddenly, a sharp pain gripped his chest and he collapsed. Gasping for breath, Marcus feared this was the end. Yet, as quickly as the pain came, it faded, replaced by an inexplicable calm. The warmth of the stone seemed to seep into him, soothing his frailty. For a brief moment, he felt alive again. Struggling to his feet, Marcus knew he needed help to understand what he had found. This wasn't just a relic. It was a message, a fragment of a forgotten past. Clutching the memory of the stone and the warmth that lingered in his hand, he made his way back to the ruins. He had no idea this discovery would rewrite history and change everything he thought he knew. Marcus returned to the village of Delphi as twilight fell. The warmth of the stone marker lingered on his hand, a reminder of what he had uncovered. That night, the etched symbols haunted his mind, stirring questions he couldn't answer. The marker was no ordinary relic. It felt ancient and powerful. But Marcus knew he needed help to decipher it. The next morning, Marcus found a small bookstore in the village, its dusty shelves filled with old texts. Behind the counter was Elena Vasilis, a young archaeologist who had retreated to her hometown. She listened skeptically to Marcus's story until he sketched the symbols from memory. Her interest sharpened as she studied the unfamiliar designs. "These aren't like anything I've seen," she said. "Where is it?" "In a clearing, away from the main ruins," Marcus replied. I left it there. It felt wrong to move it. Elena hesitated before agreeing to investigate. With cameras and notebooks, they set off early. The overgrown path Marcus had followed seemed more concealed, as if the forest sought to hide the relic. When they reached the clearing, the stone marker stood as he had left it, etched with enigmatic symbols. Elena examined it closely, tracing her fingers over the carvings. "These aren't random," she murmured. "This is a language, and it's ancient, maybe older than Delphi itself." As she took photos, sunlight pierced through the trees and struck the marker. To their astonishment, the carvings seemed to glow, and shadows shifted across its surface, forming intricate patterns. "It's reacting to light," Elena whispered. "This isn't just a relic. It's a device." Marcus's stomach churned. What kind of device? And why had it been hidden? Elena quickly analyzed the symbols, linking them to ancient astronomical signs. "It looks like a map," she said. "But to where?" Before they could speculate further, rustling in the trees made them freeze. A group of men dressed in black emerged, their faces hidden. One stepped forward, his voice cold. "Step away from the marker." Elena stood her ground. "This is a protected site. Who are you?" The man ignored her, signaling for his companions to advance. Marcus's heart raced. These weren't archaeologists. They were here for the marker. "Run!" Elena hissed, grabbing Marcus's arm. They fled down the path, adrenaline propelling Marcus forward despite his age. The men gave chase, their voices echoing through the forest. Somehow, they reached the main ruins where the crowds of tourists forced their pursuers to retreat. Back at Elena's home, they locked the door and caught their breath. "Who were they?" Marcus asked. "I don't know," Elena said, her face pale. "But they knew what we found. And this isn't just an artifact, it's something dangerous." Marcus sat in silence, the weight of her words sinking in. The marker wasn't just a discovery, it was a threat. Yet, despite his fear, a spark of determination burned within him. Whatever the marker's secrets were, they couldn't turn back now. The past demanded to be understood. The quiet hum of the night surrounded Marcus and Elena as they sat in her small kitchen. The photographs of the marker spread out between them. The men who had chased them earlier were gone, but their presence lingered like a shadow. The symbols on the marker seemed to taunt Marcus, their meanings just out of reach. "This isn't just a relic," Elena murmured, her fingers tracing the patterns on one of the photographs. "If it's a map, it might lead to something someone doesn't want found." Marcus nodded. "But who would kill to protect something like this?" "We need help," Elena said. "There's someone in Athens, Professor Dimitrios Kanellos. He's brilliant but controversial. If anyone can decipher this, it's him." By morning, they were on a bus bound for Athens. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. A man in a dark coat and hat sat silently in the back, his gaze occasionally flicking toward them. "We're not alone," Elena whispered, her voice tense. The hours passed in uneasy silence until they arrived in the chaotic bustle of Athens. The man vanished into the crowd as quickly as he had appeared, leaving Marcus unnerved. They hurried through the streets to the National University, where Kanellos worked. The professor's office was an organized mess of ancient texts and artifacts. Kanellos himself was a sharp-eyed man with an intensity that put Marcus on edge. As Elena explained their discovery, his skepticism gave way to fascination when he saw the photographs. "This is remarkable," Kanellos said, leaning closer. "These symbols, they're not just a language. They're mathematical, astronomical. This isn't just a map. It's a key." "A key to what?" Marcus asked. Kanellos hesitated. "Legends speak of civilizations predating known history. Atlantis, perhaps, or something even older. If this artifact is genuine, it could rewrite everything we know about human origins." The room fell silent as the weight of his words settled over them. "But Canellos added, his voice dropping. "You must be cautious. Secrets like this have toppled empires. There are people who would kill to keep it buried." Leaving the university, Marcus felt the heavy truth of the professor's warning. This wasn't just a discovery. It was a secret someone was willing to protect at all costs. That night, in their hotel room, he watched Elena fall asleep, her desk scattered with notes and photographs. A noise outside broke the stillness. Pulling the curtain aside, Marcus froze. Across the street stood the man from the bus, his shadowed figure unmoving, staring directly at their window. Marcus's breath quickened. The man lingered, his gaze unyielding, before vanishing into the night. The message was clear. They were being watched. Whatever they had uncovered, it was dangerous, and the danger was only beginning. The man's shadowy figure lingered in Marcus's mind long after it disappeared into the Athens night. Whatever they had uncovered, it wasn't safe. By morning, Marcus and Elena were back in Professor Canellos' office, seeking answers. Canellos, surrounded by books and notes, looked weary but exhilarated. "The artifact's symbols align with ancient astronomical markers," he said. "But more intriguing is this sequence here. It resembles coordinates." "Coordinates to what?" Elena asked. "To a location," Canellos said. "And this symbol here," he pointed to a spiral-like carving. "It's linked to myths of Atlantis or something older." Atlantis? Marcus's heart skipped. The fabled lost civilization had always been dismissed as a metaphor, but Canellos's tone suggested otherwise. Plato described Atlantis as an advanced society destroyed by cataclysm. What if it wasn't just a story? What if this artifact is a clue to their existence, or something they left behind? The weight of Canellos's words sank in. "You think we could find evidence of a civilization older than any we've known?" Marcus asked. "Possibly," Canellos said. "But if this is real, it's not just history. It's power, and power attracts the wrong people." Their conversation was cut short by shuffling outside the door. Canellos motioned for silence, but the door burst open before they could react. Two men in black rushed inside, shoving Marcus aside as they grabbed the photographs. Elena snapped a quick photo of one attacker before she was thrown against the desk. Marcus grabbed the original photograph of the marker and bolted, shouting for Elena and Canellos to follow. They fled through the university's twisting hallways, the sound of footsteps close behind. Bursting into the crowded streets of Athens, they lost their pursuers in the chaos. At a quiet cafe, the trio caught their breath. "This isn't a coincidence," Marcus said, his voice trembling. "They've been following us since Delphi." Elena nodded. "And they're not going to stop." Canellos pulled out an old map. "The coordinates point to a region in the Aegean Sea, near Santorini. If we want answers, we have to go there." The mention of Santorini stirred something in Marcus. The volcanic island had long been tied to Atlantis myths, its destruction mirroring Plato's descriptions of the cataclysm. Despite his failing health, Marcus felt a pull he couldn't resist. "We leave tonight," Canellos said. "The longer we wait, the more dangerous this becomes." Later, aboard a ferry to Santorini, Marcus stood on the deck, the cool wind whipping against his face. The dark sea stretched endlessly before him, but his mind raced. Could Atlantis be real? Could they truly be on the verge of uncovering a secret hidden for millennia? Elena joined him, her expression a mix of fear and resolve. "If we find something," she said, "we can't let it fall into the wrong hands." Marcus nodded, though doubt weighed heavily on him. The path ahead was fraught with danger, and he wasn't sure they were ready for what awaited them. The ferry glided silently through the Aegean Sea under a moonless sky. Marcus leaned against the railing, the dark waves stretching endlessly below. Despite his frailty, the pull of discovery outweighed his fear. This wasn't just a search for history, it was a quest for answers. By dawn, Santorini's dramatic cliffs rose before them, crowned by whitewashed villages. The island, steeped in ancient mystery, seemed to echo the cataclysm that had shaped it. Following the marker's coordinates, the trio ventured away from the bustling streets to a secluded shoreline where the sea lapped at jagged rocks. Canelos studied his map. "The coordinates point below," he said. "Whatever we're looking for is underwater." Elena was already preparing the diving gear she had borrowed from locals. If this is tied to Atlantis, or something older, it makes sense. The volcanic eruption that destroyed Santorini would have submerged any remnants. Marcus watched anxiously as Elena disappeared beneath the waves, her flashlight cutting through the murky depths. The minutes stretched into an hour before she resurfaced, her expression a mix of awe and disbelief. "There's something down there," she gasped. "Columns, carvings. It's enormous." By midday, all three descended into the cold, dark water. As they approached the seabed, Marcus's breath caught. Towering stone columns etched with symbols identical to the marker rose from the ocean floor. The ruins sprawled into the darkness, hinting at an ancient city buried beneath centuries of sediment. Elena motioned for them to follow. They swam toward the entrance of what appeared to be a temple. Though partially collapsed, it retained a haunting grandeur. Above the doorway, faintly glowing symbols pulsed like a heartbeat. As Canelos examined the entrance, a deep vibration rippled through the water. Marcus felt an intense pressure in his chest, as though the sea itself was alive. Elena clutched his arm, her wide eyes mirroring his alarm. The vibration grew stronger, stirring clouds of sediment that obscured their vision. Panic set in as the three struggled to retreat. Marcus's lungs burned as he kicked toward the surface, his body screaming for air. They broke through, gasping as they clung to the side of the boat. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Elena whispered, "It's alive. The glow, the vibrations. It's like the temple is still active." Canelos nodded, his expression grim. "And we're not the only ones who know it's here." Marcus turned toward the shore. Standing on the rocks was the man from Delphi, watching them. Even at this distance, his presence radiated menace. Marcus's stomach churned. Whatever lay beneath the waves wasn't just a discovery. It was a secret, one others would kill to protect. The waves slapped against the boat as Marcus, Elena, and Canelos sat in tense silence. The man from Delphi had disappeared, but his shadow loomed over their discovery. Whatever lay beneath the sea wasn't just ancient, it was alive. "We have to go back," Elena said resolutely. "That temple, it's still active. If something survived, it could change everything." "Or it could be a warning," Marcus replied, his voice low. "Some things are meant to stay buried." Canelos studied the underwater photographs. "If we don't investigate, someone else will, and they might destroy it. Or worse." As the sun sank below the horizon, they prepared to dive. With additional gear, they descended into the cold, dark water. This time, the sea felt heavier, resisting their intrusion. When they reached the ruins, the faint glow of the symbols pulsed steadily, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. Clearing the entrance took longer than expected, and every vibration from the ruins set Marcus's nerves on edge. Finally, they slipped inside. The temple's interior was breathtaking. Vast columns loomed above, their surfaces carved with intricate symbols that hummed with latent energy. The walls were alive with murals depicting a civilization that seemed to harness power from the stars. At the chamber's center stood an altar, atop which rested a circular artifact. It glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the vibrations. Elena swam toward it, her breath catching. "This is what the marker led us to," she whispered. When her fingers touched the artifact, the vibrations surged, and a low hum filled the chamber. Marcus watched in awe as the murals began to shift. The painted stars realigned, and the figures moved as though the temple itself had awakened. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the ruins. Sediment erupted from the cracks, clouding the water. "It's collapsing," Marcus shouted through the comm system. Elena clutched the artifact as the trio swam for the exit. The vibrations grew deafening, and the temple seemed to reject them, the glow fading as the water darkened. Marcus's lungs burned as he kicked toward the surface, desperate for air. They burst through the waves, gasping as they clung to the boat. For a moment, none of them spoke. The ruins below had gone silent, swallowed by the ocean's depths once more. Elena placed the artifact on the deck, its glow dim but steady. "This changes everything," she said, her voice trembling. "It's not just a relic. It's alive. It's a key." Marcus stared at it, his mind racing with possibilities. Before he could respond, another boat appeared from the shadows. Armed men stood aboard, their weapons gleaming under the moonlight. Leading them was the man from Delphi, his expression cold and unyielding. Marcus's heart sank. They hadn't just uncovered history, they had stepped into a battle for its control. The second boat cut through the moonlit water, its dark hull an ominous shadow against the waves. Armed men stood on deck, their weapons trained on Marcus, Elena, and Canellos. At the helm stood the man from Delphi, his cold gaze locked on the glowing artifact resting on their boat. "Hand it over," he demanded, his voice calm but threatening. "You don't understand what you've found." Elena stepped forward, shielding the artifact. "And you do. Who are you?" The man ignored her question. "That artifact doesn't belong to you. It's dangerous, and you're putting lives at risk." Marcus's heart raced. They were unarmed and vastly outnumbered. Before the standoff could escalate, Canellos stepped forward. "If you know what this is, then you know its importance. It's not just a relic. It's a key to our past." The man's expression hardened. "Some knowledge is too dangerous to uncover. If that artifact falls into the wrong hands, it could destroy everything." Elena's grip on the artifact tightened. "And I suppose your hands are the right ones?" Before the man could answer, another boat appeared in the distance, its lights slicing through the darkness. The man from Delphi barked orders to his crew, their weapons swiveling toward the approaching vessel. Tension crackled in the air as the two groups prepared for confrontation. Seizing the moment, Elena grabbed Marcus's arm. "We need to go. Now!" Canellos gunned the engine and their boat lurched forward into the open sea. Shouts and gunfire erupted behind them, the chaos fading as they sped away into the night. Marcus clung to the side, his breath ragged, the artifact's faint glow reflecting in his wide eyes. For hours they sailed under the cover of darkness, the tension palpable. Finally, Marcus broke the silence. "We can't keep running. They won't stop until they get it." "They don't want to use it. They want to bury it," Elena said. "But why? What are they so afraid of?" Canellos glanced at her, his face grim. "They're not afraid of the artifact itself. They're afraid of what it could reveal. If this is tied to Atlantis, or something older, it could rewrite history. That kind of knowledge threatens power, control, everything." The boat slowed as Canellos guided them into a hidden cove, its rocky cliffs shielding them from view. He shut off the engine, and the night fell eerily silent. "We'll be safe here for a while," he said. Helena carefully lifted the artifact, its glow casting an ethereal light on their faces. "We need help," she said. "Someone who can protect this, and help us uncover the truth." Marcus hesitated. "Do you know anyone we can trust?" Canellos nodded. "There's a man, a rogue archaeologist, discredited, but brilliant. If anyone can help us, it's him." As they planned their next move, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The artifact had set something in motion, something far larger than them. Trust was fragile and betrayal seemed inevitable, yet it was the only thing keeping them alive. For now. The cove offered them a brief refuge, but Marcus knew they couldn't hide forever. As the sun rose, Canello steered their boat toward a small, isolated island. There, they hoped to find Dorian Vallis, a rogue archaeologist who had spent decades chasing whispers of Atlantis. The artifact glowed faintly on the deck, its pulse steady and ominous. When they docked, Marcus felt the air shift, charged, electric. Dorian emerged from his crumbling estate, a wiry man with piercing eyes that seemed to see straight through them. "So," he said, his gaze fixed on the artifact, "you've found it." "We need your help," Canello said. "This artifact, it's tied to a submerged temple near Santorini. We don't know what it is, but we know it's dangerous." Dorian nodded. "Come inside." The estate's interior was chaotic, filled with maps, books, and artifacts stacked precariously on every surface. Dorian cleared a space on a large table, gesturing for Elena to place the artifact there. Its glow illuminated the room, casting shifting shadows on the walls. "This isn't just a relic," Dorian murmured, examining it closely. "It's a key. But to what?" Marcus spoke. "The temple murals. They showed a civilization harnessing energy from the stars and Earth. Could this be their creation?" Dorian's gaze sharpened. "If it is, you've stumbled upon something far beyond our understanding, and you've seen how far people will go to keep it hidden." Elena nodded. "They don't just want the artifact, they want to destroy it." Dorian tapped the table thoughtfully. "This could lead to the central archive of that civilization, the heart of their knowledge, but activating it will draw more attention than you're prepared for." Before anyone could respond, a distant explosion shattered the air. The windows rattled as smoke rose from the docks. Dorian cursed. "They found us!" Armed men swarmed the estate, their shouts echoing. Dorian grabbed the artifact, wrapping it in a protective cloth. "There's a passage to a cave on the other side of the island. Go." Marcus, Elena, and Canellos followed Dorian through a dark, narrow tunnel, the walls trembling with each explosion. The air was thick with the smell of salt and earth. Marcus's heart pounded, every step feeling heavier than the last. When they emerged into the cave, sunlight streamed through an opening. Their relief was short-lived. A second group of armed men waited, blocking the exit. The man from Delphi stepped forward, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos. "Hand it over," he said. "This ends now." Dorian clutched the artifact tighter. "If you take this, the knowledge it holds will be lost forever." "That's the point," the man said coldly. Before anyone could act, the ground trembled violently. A resonant hum filled the cave, and the artifact began to glow brighter, its light piercing through the cloth. Marcus felt the vibration deep in his chest, as if the air itself was alive. "Run!" Dorian shouted, shoving Marcus toward the opening. As they fled, Marcus glanced back. The artifact's light blazed like a star, and the cave shook as though the earth itself was responding. Whatever they had awakened, it was beyond their control. The cave trembled violently, the artifact's light pulsing with a blinding intensity. Marcus, Elena, and Canellos scrambled through the narrow passage, the sound of collapsing stone roaring behind them. Whatever they had awakened, it was no longer dormant. When they burst into the open air, the ground was still shaking. The sky seemed unnaturally charged, the sunlight dimmed by a strange, shimmering haze. Marcus glanced back to see the man from Delphi and his men emerging from the cave, their eyes fixed on the artifact wrapped in Dorian's arms. "We have to move," Elena yelled, pulling Marcus toward the shoreline. The group raced toward a small fishing boat hidden among the rocks. Dorian shoved the artifact into the boat, his expression grim. "It's not just reacting," he said, his voice tight. "It's broadcasting. The energy it's emitting. It's a signal. We need to leave now." "A signal!" Marcus gasped as he clambered into the boat. Dorian nodded. "Whatever we've activated, it's calling out, and something is bound to answer." Canellos started the engine, and the boat roared to life. It sped away from the island, leaving the armed men behind. But even as the island faded into the distance, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't truly escaped. As the boat cut through the choppy sea, Elena broke the silence. If this is a signal, then whoever, or whatever, it's meant for might already be on their way. Marcus's stomach turned. You're saying it's not just a key, it's a call? Dorian nodded. A call to something far older than we can comprehend. And the people chasing us, they're not just trying to bury history, they're trying to stop what's coming. The weight of his words settled over them like a storm cloud. The artifact wasn't just a relic, it was a bridge to a power that humanity wasn't ready for. They reached the mainland as twilight fell, docking in an abandoned harbor. Dorian led them to a nearby warehouse, its crumbling walls offering a fragile semblance of safety. Inside, the artifact's glow illuminated the dark space, casting long, flickering shadows. "We can't keep running," Elena said, pacing. "We need to figure out what this thing is and how to stop it." Dorian crouched by the artifact, his face etched with worry. "If we can decipher its full purpose, we might be able to reverse what's been set in motion. But time isn't on our side." Marcus frowned. "If this signal is as strong as you say, then it's only a matter of time before something, or someone, answers it." As if in response, the artifact pulsed, its glow intensifying. A low, resonant hum filled the air, vibrating through their bodies. Marcus staggered back as a vision of the temple's murals flashed in his mind. The celestial alignments, the figures, the power. It wasn't just history. It was a map. The warehouse doors burst open and the man from Delphi strode in, his men close behind. "You've doomed us all," he said, his voice cold. "This should have stayed buried." Before anyone could respond, the artifact erupted in light. A beam shot upward, piercing the roof and splitting the sky. The hum became a deafening roar, and the ground quaked with a force that felt alive. Marcus's breath caught as he realized the truth. Whatever the artifact had called, it was already here. The artifact's beam split the sky, illuminating the night as the ground shook violently. Marcus shielded his eyes, the warehouse trembling around them. Whatever had been called was no longer a distant threat. It was arriving. "You've doomed us all," the man from Delphi snarled, his men backing away in fear as the artifact pulsed brighter. "That thing isn't a key, it's a weapon." Elena stepped forward. "You don't understand. This wasn't built to destroy, it was built to protect. Whatever's happening, it's too late to stop now." Dorian's voice was steady despite the chaos. This artifact wasn't just a relic of the past. It was a warning and a call. They created it to preserve what was left of their civilization. The artifact pulsed again, sending a wave of energy through the room. Cracks formed in the walls, beams of light spilling through. A deep hum filled the air, vibrating through Marcus's chest. He fell to his knees as visions overtook him. Cities floating on endless oceans, towers reaching the stars, and beings wielding immense power. Then came the destruction, the earth splitting, the seas rising, and their light fading. "Elena," Marcus gasped, "it's not just history, it's a warning of what's to come." A massive tremor shook the ground as the beam of light above the artifact split the clouds. Celestial forms shimmered within the beam, immense and radiant, descending toward them. Marcus's breath caught. Whatever they weren't human. "What are those?" Canelos whispered. "They're answering the call," Dorian replied. His voice was filled with both awe and dread. The men from Delphi dropped their weapons, retreating as the shapes drew closer. Elena turned to Marcus, panic in her eyes. "We can't let this happen. They don't belong here." Marcus shook his head. "We can't stop it. This was meant to happen." The artifact's glow reached a blinding intensity. The celestial forms descended further, their presence overwhelming. Suddenly, a deep, resonant voice filled the air. Though unintelligible, its meaning was clear. It was judgment. The ground split beneath them as the warehouse collapsed. Marcus grabbed Elena and Canelos, pulling them toward the exit. Behind them, Dorian remained, clutching the artifact, his eyes fixed on the descending forms. "Go!" Dorian shouted. "You can't stop this, but you can survive." They stumbled out as the artifact erupted in a final pulse of light, the beam stretching skyward to meet the celestial forms. The night fell silent, the tremors subsiding. When Marcus opened his eyes, the artifact and the celestial beings were gone. Only the faint shimmer of starlight remained. Elena's voice broke the silence. "What? What just happened?" Marcus stared at the horizon, his voice quiet. "We called them, and they answered." A faint hum lingered in the air, a reminder that what had been awakened was far from over,